Sir, please do not interrupt me. Please do not.
Being clear.
Please do not interrupt me. Please do not interrupt me.
Sir.
You may answer questions after I ask them. I'm going to try to find out if you actually are pro-democracy or if you're simply pro-Democrat and are a partisan. We've seen the Democrats who want to change the topic. So I will say it is disappointing that you had a chance leading a nonprofit that is supposedly pro-democracy to take a principled stand. Instead, you decided to defend the Somali fraudsters because it benefits elected Democrats. You're co-president of Public Citizen, which describes itself as a consumer advocate and a pro-democracy organization. Would you agree that the fraud in Minnesota was staggering and shocking?
I agree that there is fraud in Minnesota. I don't believe these estimates are grounded in any evidence that I've seen. The $9 billion figure was based on a claim just that, well, I think that half of them must be fraudulent. I just heard a comment just saying, boost the number up. But to be clear, and with respect, you missed my testimony. No question there's fraud in Minnesota, and absolutely I share your righteous anger about whatever degree of fraud there was there.
Do you agree that any Democrat politician, or let me be clear, any Republican politician that had knowledge of the fraud and was complicit should be prosecuted?
I'm not sure what they're being prosecuted for, but also in my testimony, I described also outside of Minnesota the manifold ways that this administration is enabling fraud.
I understand. The reason, hold on.
The standard is that you want
to
prosecute.
Sir, I'm going to ask a question, and then you can answer it.
Yes, sir.
Your organization describes itself as a pro-democracy organization. I'm going to try to find out if you actually are pro-democracy or if you're simply pro-Democrat and are a partisan. We've seen the Democrats who want to change the topic. So I get you want to testify how much you hate Donald Trump. But I'm quite certain Donald Trump was not running a fraudulent daycare center or a fraudulent autism center in Minnesota. So all of the talking points about how you dislike Trump, set them aside. We will see the Democrats on this committee go down those talking points. Do you believe elected politicians in Minnesota who were aware of this fraud and were complicit in it should be prosecuted? Should there be accountability?
There absolutely should be accountability. It is not normal to prosecute government officials for not prosecuting fraud. That is not a standard I'm aware of that you've advocated or that anyone else has advocated in the Senate.
So do you think it's perfectly okay?
I did not say
if let's say Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison knew about the fraud, benefited from the fraud in terms of bundling votes, benefited from the frauds in terms of collecting campaign finance violations, and deliberately looked the other way. You think that's not criminal conduct?
In that hypothetical, it is not okay. 100% not okay. But also, if you'll permit me, that hypothetical is in fact happening throughout.
Okay, yes, I get it. You dislike Trump. I understand you dislike Trump,
sir. It is whether I have a standard of accountability.
So let me sir, please do not interrupt me. Please do not.
Being clear.
Please do not interrupt me. Please do not interrupt me.
Sir.
You may answer questions after I ask them. You've heard the evidence and testimony about daycare centers with no children, with no toys, with no facilities, with windows that are blacked out. Do you believe it is possible that the officials sending millions of dollars to those fake daycare centers and fake autism centers didn't know what was going on?
Well, what I heard was claims about that, and I too have watched the video. We're both parents. I'm glad that the child care centers don't open their door for someone who's knocking there. I don't view that as evidence that the child care centers are fake child care centers, although I'm sure there are some. My understanding is that state investigators have gone to do their duty at those exact same child centers and have found that most of them actually are operating correctly.
Well, I will say it is disappointing that you had a chance leading a nonprofit that is supposedly pro-democracy to take a principled stand. Instead, you decided to defend the Somali fraudsters because it benefits elected Democrats. That's disappointing. But you know what? I'm going to give you something you're going to like, an opportunity to say all the ways you dislike President Trump. because I'm going to recognize the ranking member who will surely ask you why Trump is terrible and do everything you and he can do to change the topic from the actual topic of this hearing.
Following this highly contentious February 2026 subcommittee hearing, the political fallout surrounding municipal state aid intensified as a coalition of Republican senators actively advanced the Stop Corruption and Abuse of Municipalities (SCAM) Act. The proposed legislation demands rigorous federal oversight, giving federal enforcement agencies the direct authority to intercept municipal funds and penalize state departments that process fraudulent transactions through a lack of field verification. Concurrently, the Minnesota Department of Human Services faced immense local pressure to enforce stricter administrative rules for alternative health care and private child care operations, resulting in surprise state inspections and mandatory operational logs to completely disenroll bad actors from state-funded infrastructure. The political battlefield inside the Senate Judiciary Committee erupted into a fierce, highly partisan shouting match over public program integrity and deep-seated systemic oversight. Subcommittee Chair Senator Ted Cruz launched a relentless, direct cross-examination against public citizen co-president Robert Weissman, accusing top-tier state administrators of deliberately blinding themselves to a staggering multi-million-dollar welfare dragnet. Cruz went on the offensive immediately, criticizing Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison for failing to appear at the witness table and aggressively pressing Weissman to admit that any public official who intentionally ignored or financially benefited from organized municipal fraud should face direct criminal prosecution. The confrontation rapidly escalated into a heated institutional debate regarding the standard of criminal accountability and the baseline definition of verifiable investigative evidence. Weissman pushed back firmly, asserting that while program fraud undoubtedly occurred in Minnesota, the explosive multi-billion-dollar estimates floated by lawmakers lacked proper empirical grounding. He sought to shift the narrative by pointing out that corporate fraud and administration-linked scams throughout the federal government were being systematically coddled and overlooked. Cruz fiercely interrupted the defense, cutting off the witness to declare that the nonprofit leader was relying on worn-out political talking points to shield local fraudsters, simply because the institutional oversight happened to implicate elected Democrats. The hearing reached its absolute boiling point when Cruz and Weissman directly clashed over hidden municipal field operations, transforming the panel into an intense cross-examination over baseline administrative negligence. Cruz detailed graphic whistleblower descriptions of state-funded daycare centers completely devoid of children, lacking basic toys, and sporting blacked-out windows to conceal empty rooms. Weissman countered the visual narrative by explaining that restricted access at private child care locations is a standard parental security measure to keep children safe, adding that separate state investigators discovered the vast majority of the targeted centers were operating entirely within regular compliance bounds despite the public allegations. The legal and ethical implications of the standoff continued to widen as Cruz sharply challenged the core identity of the consumer advocacy group itself. The Texas senator vocally questioned whether the organization was genuinely committed to its stated mission of protecting ordinary taxpayers, or if it was merely functioning as a partisan shield for the political establishment. Cruz closed the viral confrontation by mockingly yielding his remaining time to the committee's ranking member, stating on the official record that it was deeply disappointing to watch a self-described pro-democracy, non-profit-run public defensive cover for regional scam operations instead of taking a principled stand for the integrity of public funds.